Hello, and welcome to another Fantasy Premier League video. My name is Steve, and today we're taking a look at how I think Son is set to become essential, even though I know it may look a little bit knee-jerk considering he has just scored a hat-trick, but there are some other things to consider with Son. The game week has closed off. I think the league tables they're still updating, mostly updated. I think most of the scores are all in. It scores 79 points with a very high average this week of 72. Managed to get ourselves a green arrow. I think each point's worth about 50 to 60k at my rank at the moment, so a couple of points above my safety score. Of course, Haaland coming through with 40 of the points means the rest of my squad only came away with 39, and it was pretty much my midfield who managed to pull in the points for me. Johnston and Net getting 1, Trippier with 1, Stupinan with 2, conceding very late in that match. I think it was like the 93rd minute. Chilwell with 1. Across the middle of the park, though, we did quite well. Mbeumo scored a goal, Madison scored a goal, Salah scored a goal, and both Saka and Foden came away with an assist each, which came directly from a corner. Foden probably quite lucky with that assist there, as that call about whether the player was offside could have gone pretty much either way. I held on to João Pedro last week. I kind of had to, as I mentioned in the video last week. I am at 0.0 million in the bank, and so I just decided to roll the transfer and play João Pedro. I have said in previous videos I was happy to take 2 benchings in the opening 4 to 5 game weeks, and I would continue to stick with Pedro, and I had a bit of a feeling that I thought he was probably going to get the start against Newcastle. The bench is terrible. Baldock 1, Kabore 1, and Woodrow 1, but I am playing with an incredibly light bench. So before we get started, if you're not already a subscriber of this channel, please consider subscribing. It really does help the channel out. And before we go talking about Son, we'll just jump quickly into the FPLFanatic League. It's a new league that I have created for this season of the channel. It's my second season doing content, and we do have a league running. You can find a link in the description below if you would like to join. Mark Hubbard is currently sitting top of the league with 281 points, but has used all of his chips with a triple captain, bench boost, free hit, and I believe a wild card in the first 4 game weeks. He looks like he's playing for the monthly prizes. Hard luck, mate. 55k overall. Not a bad effort, all things considered. But Russell Glenn is only sitting 3 points behind him and hasn't used any chips. So an absolutely stellar start to the season there, Russell. It's a very solid 82k rank heading into the international break. Well played. So, Son. So I said last week in my video, in the intro actually, that I thought that Richarlison was destined for the bench based on his performance last week and his performances in the opening couple of weeks. And even though Postecoglou did play Richarlison in the midweek fixture in the EFL Cup, he actually started a very second string team for that match. And in the fixture against Burnley, so the Premier League fixture just gone, my prediction has immediately materialised as Postecoglou benched Richarlison and played Son in the number 9 role up front. Now, Son looked like he was back to the days of old where him and Kane used to link up very well together. Son has played in the number 9 role before. It is not a position that he is unfamiliar with. And like a smiling assassin, he looked sharp, dynamic, and deadly in that fixture against Burnley, making him look near on essential. So his first goal was a beautiful, delicate chip shot that was kind of a 1-2 with Solomon, who was playing out on the left wing. So Son's been moved from the left wing to the number 9 role. They're playing Solomon out on the left wing, who I thought actually had a pretty good game for his first game into the team. Laid the ball off to Son, which he took a little bit wide, and with the calmness and collectiveness of the clinical nature in which we have seen Son shoot before, chipped the goalkeeper and got his Premier League tally off to a good start. He completed his hat-trick in the second half before being subbed at the 72nd minute. So he managed to get his hat-trick within the first 70 minutes of the game, and he was subbed off for Richarlison, who came on in that number 9 role, and so Solomon still played on the left wing. I was kind of wondering what was going to happen there. I thought Postecoglou might have maybe taken Solomon off on the left wing and potentially played Richarlison out there. I wonder if he will try that at some point, because Richarlison does not at all look comfortable in that number 9 role. When he did come on, he didn't really have too much of an effect on the game. Does not look like his position, and I am not entirely sure what is going on with Richarlison, but I do not see him starting back in that number 9 role anytime soon. Now, having watched the full match, well, I was actually watching the City match because I had Foden in that team, but I did have on my side screen the Spurs versus Burnley game going on, so I did watch quite a lot of that match. And Ange Ball is incredibly attacking. I have mentioned in previous videos that I think Spurs will become a little bit leaky just simply because of the way they play. It's actually kind of similar to Aston Villa. It's a very open, expansive game, lots of attack, lots of balls coming around the wing, down the wing, very fast and dynamic style of football, very beautiful style of football to watch. But I think this could bode extremely well for Son playing in that number 9 role. I think it's a position that's probably going to suit him a lot better than being out on the wing, even though that is his traditionally best position. Now, the reasons for that is Son is multi-footed. He's obviously got a really good right foot, it's his predominant foot, but his left foot is about as good as his right foot, which makes it an absolute nightmare for centre-backs to try and figure out what the hell he's going to do. Out in the left wing, you don't actually get to see him use his left foot as much as possibly what he could, because most of the time he will be cutting in onto his right foot and coming across towards goal. It will pretty much always be on his dominant foot. But playing in that number 9 role means that he does get the chance to use that weapon that is in his locker that he doesn't get to use very often. Now, I don't think he actually scored any of his goals with his left foot, but it is something in his locker that will add to his dangerous nature in which he will play in that role. Now, the other thing that I think that is in Son's favour for why I think he will end up becoming essential. I mean, this week it looks like it's a little bit knee-jerk because he's just scored a hat-trick, but I think there's a lot of strings to Son's bow. So in that EFL Cup match that was played midweek, as I said, Richarlison started. in the EFL Cup matches, there's actually no extra time. If the game is drawn at the end of the game, they go straight to penalties. Now, Richarlison was subbed off at the 72nd minute mark in that match, which basically means he's not on penalties. There's almost no shot that Richarlison is on penalties. If he was one of the preferred penalty takers, even if he was having a bit of a poor game, I think Postecoglou would have probably kept him on to keep one of his, best or favoured penalty takers on the pitch, as it was only 18 minutes away from going to instant penalties at the close of the 90 minutes. Now, at the 72nd minute mark, Postecoglou took off Richarlison. It was in and around the same point. There was, I think, a few minutes difference between when players came on or off. But Son was brought on. Kulusevski was brought on. Both of these players took penalties. I can't remember if Maddison was on the pitch or not, whether he came on. I think he did come on a little bit later, about the 82nd minute or whatever. And I think, was it Fulham that they were playing in that match? They actually brought on a lot of players at that point as well, in and around the 70 to 80 minute mark. And the players that they brought on were their first team players that were all likely to take penalties. So Andreas Pereira, I think, came on, who took a penalty. And so all the managers just basically brought all the players on that were going to take pens. Now, in a penalty shootout, there are two really important spots in the 5 men that take the penalties, and it's kind of manager dependent as to who takes what penalty, but typically either the very first penalty taker is your preferred penalty taker in your team, or the last penalty taker is the important penalty taker. And the reason for that is the first penalty taker actually has a lot of pressure on them to score, but even more so, the last penalty taker has probably even more pressure lumped on them, because if you miss that shot, typically that's it, your team's out at that point. So in that penalty shootout, Son was the man who stepped up and took the first penalty, which puts him in incredibly good stead as being the front runner for penalties in that team, assuming that Postecoglou put his best man out as the first penalty taker. Now, Davinson Sanchez took the third penalty in that penalty shootout and missed the pen. And so if you're saving your best penalty taker as your last spot taker, i.e. the high pressure penalty that must be scored, you don't leave him till the 5th spot at that point, because you've already missed. You now need to bring that penalty taker forward, and it was Maddison who took the 4th all-important penalty, which he did, of course, score. So without Kane at Spurs anymore, we are unsure of exactly who the penalty taker is, but given the penalty shootout in the EFL Cup, it looks very heavily skewed to either Son or Maddison. Now, Son is the captain at Spurs, and so my money is on Son probably being the main penalty taker in the team. But if he is only going to play 70 odd minutes, I'm not entirely sure why he was subbed off in the 70 minutes. I mean, yes, the game was dead and buried, and maybe you just wanted to preserve him, but there's not a lot to preserve. Well, there's not a lot for Postecoglou to preserve Son for, as there's pretty much no other midweek matches or anything else to play for. It is just the Premier League that Spurs are focusing on, which is another reason why I think Son will end up becoming quite essential in the coming game weeks. So my money is on Son being penalty taker, but it could also quite easily be Maddison, as he took the last penalty in that team. And of course, if Son is only going to play 70 odd minutes and Postecoglou is going to persist with trying to get Richarlison to snap into some sort of form in that number 9 role, then it may be Son who is the make way for Richarlison coming on. So if you don't have Maddison in your squads, I'm still highly recommending that anyone bring Maddison in, but I do think that Son secretly might have penalties in his locker. So that is my priority transfer in at the end of the international break. I will be bringing Son into the squad for this Sheffield United game. They do then have another couple of tricky games in game weeks 6 and 7. I think it's Arsenal and then Liverpool, I believe. But this Sheffield United game has got Hall written all over it for Son, and I do not want to miss out on that fixture now that we have seen that Son is going to play in that number 9 role. That is something that I said I thought would happen at some point. I just didn't realise it was going to happen so quickly. So he is my priority target. Now, how am I going to get Son into this team without losing Salah? So I am running a 2 premium setup, which is reliant on basically the second premium plus Pedro. I need some sort of 5.5-ish priced player in my team in order to hold on to Salah. This whole team is built around having Salah in my squad, and I am not going to be sacrificing Salah in order to get Son into this team. That would just be abandoning my strategy, and the strategy is working quite well at the moment. Salah has 4 returns in 4 this season, and has some sort of ridiculous record like 10 returns in 10 Premier League fixtures and 24 returns in the last 21 games. So Salah is going nowhere from my squad. He's still returning. Of course, if he does get sold to Al Ittihad or one of the Saudi leagues, then obviously I will have to rethink that. But I don't think that will happen, and up until that point, Salah will be locked into my squad. So the next closest price point in my team is Saka, down at 8.6, or what's he up to now? 8.7 million. I've got 2 free transfers in the bank, and so he would be an easy slight upgrade in order to get Son into this team. However, I don't really want to sell Saka either. He scored 10 points in the first fixture, scoring a goal. He got his pen in game week 3. He gave away a penalty in game week 2. And then has grabbed an assist against Manchester United in the game just gone a few hours ago. And with Everton, Spurs and Bournemouth in the next 3 fixtures, all of which I think have rather weak defences. I mean, Spurs has a slightly better defence than the other 2, but as I said, the way in which Spurs is playing, very similar to Aston Villa, they will give up goals, which will also mean that Spurs will also have to score more goals. But these are 3 great fixtures for Saka. I have no plans to get rid of him either, and his EO is at 66%, so he is not a player that I am going to want to be getting rid of in order to fit Son into this team. Mbumo, going nowhere from my squad. He's 6.8 million, so way too far away from the 9 million price point anyway to get in. But given how he's playing and how he's returning, he's just going nowhere from my squad. And having just talked Maddison up as well, he is obviously staying in my team too. And so for all of you who have actually been following on to the channel for a little while, you will know that I brought Foden in for Rashford in game week 3. So first 2 game weeks I made no oh, did I bring him in game week 2? Sorry. No transfer game week 1. Game week 2 I had 2 free transfers, and I downgraded Rashford to Foden for his 2 really nice fixtures, which I thought he was nailed on for to get starts in. Unfortunately, he got ill in game week 3 and only came on for the last 4 minutes of that match. But I've only just recently brought Foden in, but he is the man that I am looking to sell in order to fit Son into this team. Now that might seem a bit strange that I've only brought Foden in a couple of weeks ago and then I am selling him again a couple of weeks later, but there is some additional issues that are about to creep up with Foden. Not so much, I don't think, for this West Ham fixture in game week 5 after the international break, but more so from about game week 6 onwards. Man City drew Newcastle in the Carabao Cup, which will be played between game weeks 6 and game week 7, just straight after the Nottingham Forest fixture in game week 6, which looks like a really good fixture for Foden, but that Newcastle fixture could potentially see a little bit of rotation in the City squad. The Champions League also starts for Man City. Excuse me, and that fixture is sandwiched in between game weeks 5 and game week 6. So Man City will have game week 5, a midweek fixture, game week 6, a midweek fixture, Carabao Cup against Newcastle, and then game week 7. This fixture run for Man City is really nice. West Ham, Forest, and then Wolves away across the next 3, but there are 2 other games sandwiched either side of this Nottingham Forest fixture, and so we could start to see some rotation in the City team. Now, this spot in my squad is also basically my differential spot. It's the spot that I can move around in midfield to kind of jump on different assets as the fixtures, like, it's basically my upside chasing spot, if you want to put it that way. And so even though I have brought Foden in a couple of weeks ago, he will be going out for Son. That 9 million spot means I can also jump across from Son to potentially someone like Rashford when Son's fixtures get a little bit tougher. The Sheffield United fixture is really nice, but in game week 6 I may even move Son straight back out again for a Rashford and then jump back on a Son again. I'm not entirely certain, but those are the reasons why I am looking to sell Son. Jeremy Doku also started in the Man City fixture. He was chucked straight into the starting lineup by Pep against Fulham, and he looks like a very dynamic player. Now, there's a little bit of talk in the community that he may take some minutes away from Foden. I am not entirely certain if that is as dangerous as what we think. So for all of you out there that do have Foden, I'm not saying that you should definitely sell Foden. I think he's still worth keeping on to. I think he's still the first choice player in that team. There may be a little bit of rotation, but I think he's probably still a bit of a safe hold. Doku I don't see as too much of a threat to him, because Doku looks more like just your straight out and out winger, whereas Foden actually has some responsibilities playing in the centre of the park. So when in possession, instead of Foden sitting on the right wing, he kind of shifts in to go next to Alvarez, and they play like with 2 8s or almost 2 10s sort of, sitting in behind Haaland, and Kyle Walker moves up into that right wing spot, which provides the overload that Pep's looking for, that allows them to generate some pretty dangerous attack. So I think the main threat to Foden won't be Doku, but will more likely be Bernardo Silva. Bernardo Silva playing out on that right wing, and then moving into that 10 role next to Alvarez works just as well as what it will for Foden. But the only thing there is Bernardo Silva is not really a goal scorer. And so, yes, they've got Haaland up front who scores all the goals, and he is the focal point for their attack. But I think Pep wants a few goal scorers in and around the box, which is why he's got Alvarez sitting in behind Haaland in that sort of 10/8 role, and why Foden is sitting in that same role as the dual 10s or 8s playing in behind Haaland. That's a lot of threat to deal with for any defence, and Bernardo Silva doesn't actually offer that much in terms of goal threat when he does go in and play that role. So I could see some situations where Foden is benched for Bernardo Silva, with Kovacic and Rodri sitting in behind in the sixes, behind Alvarez and Bernardo Silva. So there still could be a little bit of rotation in the City squad. But if I could hold on to Foden and still get Son into my team without losing the other players that I already have, I would very much try to hold on to Foden. But as things go, he is the man that will need to make way for this. So Foden is, well, I bought him in for 7.5 million. He's up at 7.6 million. We'll see what happens over the international break to see as to whether or not we gain any more value out of him. But I will be looking for 1.5 million in order to upgrade Foden back to a Son. And that money is going to be coming from Trippier. Yeah, Trippier out. So he is the other man that I bought in 2 weeks ago. So the two guys that I brought in game week 2, Trippier and Foden, after game week 2, game week 3. I'm getting confused between game week 2 and 3. The two men that I've brought in are actually going to be the two men that I am going to sell. Now, the reason that I'm actually looking to sell Trippier, he's the second most expensive player in the game, down at defender in the game, down at 6.5 million. And I actually managed to watch the whole Newcastle versus Brighton fixture this weekend. I saw bits and pieces of the Newcastle versus Liverpool fixture, in which I mentioned in the video last week that I was a little bit concerned that Liverpool went down to 10 men, I think on the 28th minute mark, right? So Newcastle scored about the 25th minute to make it 1-0. Van Dijk gets sent off at the 28th minute, giving Newcastle the man advantage. And Trippier basically looked rooted to the right back spot. Even with the man overload, he did not get forward. And so I made sure that I put some time aside to go and watch the Newcastle versus Brighton fixture. And again, what I noticed in that match, having actually watched the whole match, is that Trippier is not getting forward. Now for 6.5 million, yeah, he is on all set pieces. He's taking corners, he's taking all the dead balls, he's sending balls into the box. But from open play, he is not really getting forward at all. And so his ability to shoot at goal and actually lay off a more dangerous assist or big chance creation potential, so in open play, playing the ball into a striker or a man running onto the ball in the penalty area, is a much more dangerous assist threat than set pieces. Yeah, he is on all set pieces, but set pieces don't always necessarily translate to goals. But what it will do is boost his stats. His XA stats will be absolutely through the roof, and I'm pretty sure they are through the roof. I will have to double check that. But most of that is all down to set plays. And for 6.5 million, I don't actually think it's worth it, when what we're probably going to see is Newcastle will start to get a lot more clean sheets with the fixture run that they have upcoming. And so one of the potential downgrades that I am looking at is Trippier down to Botman, assuming that Botman is fit and ready at the end of the international break. But he's just not getting forward, and he's not the same Trippier that we saw last season, which, you know, got him his 200 odd. What did he get? 198 points last season, and a big chunk of that was actually the way in which he was, you know, getting quite far forward, being involved in the attack, shooting on sight, and actually playing some very dangerous balls through into the strikers, which is not what we are seeing in the first, well, not what I have seen since I have owned him in the last two fixtures. And so for 6.5 million, I do not think that is all worth it. Now, Because I'm running a 2 premium setup, I am actually very strapped for cash, and so if you are running a 1 premium setup, I think Trippier is still a pretty good option when you are going to be flush with cash. But for me, I think that 1.5, I can get 1.5 million out of Trippier, and that 1.5 million is going to be much more, it's going to have a much better investment in the midfield rather than in the defense. And so it basically looks like the 2 guys that I have brought in are going straight back out of my squads. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be making any changes right now. It is the very first day of the international break. We are still 2 weeks away from the next deadline, and so we will wait to see what comes out of the international break, whether I pick up any injuries in the rest of the squad or anything else that comes out of it. But at the moment, I am looking at Trippier down to either Botman. I still think Newcastle are a great defence. Yes, they just lost 3-1 to Brighton, but that is just down to how good Brighton are looking. They are looking exceptional this year. They're playing some amazing football. I think Newcastle actually played a pretty decent game, all things considered, and still lost 3-1. That just goes to show how good Brighton are looking. And I believe Brighton is still sitting top of the XG charts across the first 4 game weeks. So I'm not at all adverse to going down to a Botman. I would love to cover the Newcastle clean sheets. I think they are going to pick up a lot of clean sheets, but Botman comes with little to no attacking threat. The other candidates on the list are potentially an Udogie. However, Spurs' defense or their clean sheet potentials doesn't look too secure, but Udogie comes with a lot of attacking threat, and so I'd be more than happy to bring in a very attacking defender. Rico Henry is also on the list as one of those that I could downgrade to, but we will revisit the potential downgrades at the end of the international break. And so that's it for this video. So if you enjoyed this video and got something out of it, press the like button and consider subscribing. And if not, that's all good too. I appreciate you watching. Cheers.